Good morning, everyone. So, as a way of giving you some feedback on last week's prep, I thought I would go through a student answer for the 20 marker that we did. This was a 2021 paper, so the examiner report is bordering on useless. There are some top tips in there of what to avoid and what the examiners were looking for, but it was one of those COVID year papers, so there isn't any example essays for us to walk through. So one of your group kindly volunteered, sort of, and we've used their essay, which is actually not a bad essay, actually. So let's look at the question quickly. So our normal planning sort of chats that we will have. So they've entered the Brazilian market in 2018, which means they're already there, by the way. This paper was written in 2021 with limited success. To increase sales, Taco Bell could either adopt a polycentric, here's option 1, or an ethnocentric, here's option 2, approach to marketing. Evaluate these two options and recommend which one, not both, is most suitable. First part of the hook. Okay, so we're going to put H in there. For Taco Bell to increase its sales in Brazil. So, as always with hooks in questions, we have the hook twice. Okay, so we've got increase sales, and here we've got increased sales, but specifically it's in Brazil. So which one is most suitable to help them increase sales? Sales are not necessarily profits, so go very careful. Sales of what? Well, hopefully new sales to new customers of tacos and other things on the menu, drinks and stuff like that, and also repeat purchases, hopefully building up that future loyalty. Now, because this was a 20 marker in the second half of the paper, if you've listened to advice, you've done all your questions in order. Now, this is quite important for you to take on board. So we can see these are the case studies from the second half of paper 2021, and we've got exchange rates, we've got multinationals, McDonald's in there as well, and if we're looking here, we're looking at McDonald's in Brazil. How would we possibly fit that into something to do with competition in a marketplace that Taco Bell aren't doing very well in at the moment? And then we've got, they've opened up their first store in Rio de Janeiro, and we've got some lovely quotes in there, Tex-Mex dishes, XXL grilled stuffed burritos, and all those sorts of things. There's lots we can do with this. Some students, unfortunately, don't listen to advice and they go straight to the 20 marker because they've acknowledged they're not very good with timing, and maybe they will miss out on a wonderful opportunity for context from earlier questions. Let's see if we could use any of these. Remember, it's about sales in Brazil. It's not about profits in Brazil at the moment, it's about sales. So this was the first question in the second half of the paper. Percentage growth of McDonald's restaurants operating in Brazil between these two dates. You've already done a percentage. You've already looked at some details, and actually there's quite a lot here that we could have used. Okay, I know I've put these on the wrong side, but it doesn't matter. These are the ones that we would probably be focusing a lot in the last one, or the last question, sorry, but we've also done these as well. Okay, so we've already looked at the growth of McDonald's. We've got a comparison there. Taco Bell aren't doing so well. However, explain a bit about Ansoff. So we've got a Tex-Mex American company coming into a new marketplace. The question, as we know, option 1 is polycentric, and we've got option 2 ethnocentric. We could be talking about the risks associated with that and using some of the language from Ansoff. The chief examiner has helped you to think about this already. Okay, the decision to enter the Brazilian market, and this one up here is the most suitable one to increase their sales in Brazil. You've already been thinking about this 20 marker before you even knew it existed. Then we are using the data in extract F. So F is a quantitative data extract, so we're going to use it, as in we're going to probably do some calculations, low points, high points, that point to that point maybe, smooth the data out if this trend continues. All of those sorts of things we could have used. You can answer the question yourself, but we're talking about exchange rates. Okay, well, exchange rates between where? Well, we can see we've got the Brazilian real and the US dollar here. So their parent company is based in America. Quite easy link to talk about that ethnocentric Tex-Mex brand. Maybe they could mass produce things in the United States and possibly import them to a country that's not that far away. And then suddenly you've got your economies of scale argument and everything else. We've already talked about exchange rates. This could link into those other things like I mentioned. Then our 12 marker was about legal controls, and we can see that the Brazilian economy is not that friendly towards unhealthy diets, obesity issues and stuff like that. So we've got to go careful with our menus, and maybe some of the more unhealthier menu options, ethnocentric from the United States, might not be welcomed by the Brazilian government. Watch out for things like sugar tax, like we've seen in the UK on carbonated drinks. So the reason we tell you to do all these questions in the right order and just learn to manage your time is because quite a lot of this, if not all of it actually, you might be able to drop into your polycentric, ethnocentric argument. But everything starts, as we know, with our planning and our two options. So moving on, so just to remind ourselves, we've got increased sales, and which one is most suitable. So remember, this is our hook, okay, and most suitable to help Taco Bell increase its sales in Brazil. Okay, we're not talking about global sales here, we're talking about Brazilian sales. And we know that option 1 is polycentric, and we know option 2 is ethnocentric. Okay, so if we're thinking about the mark scheme, and I have lifted the mark scheme and I haven't edited it, you need to understand mark schemes are for examiners, possibly teachers, and they're there for you to interpret. This is not everything that might have come up in student responses. This is just a guide. Also remember, the 2021 paper will have a limited sample of people that actually bothered sitting it, because we were in the middle of COVID, and this was actually a November paper, not a June paper, and that was because we marked our own homework in some ways for June, and those that didn't get the grades they wanted, they had the right to appeal against that in the November. So not many people appealed against their grades, but there were some. But what the mark scheme does really well here is it starts off, for example, we've got our option 1, polycentric, and it starts off with a nice definition. This is what you need to do at the beginning of your option 1. So polycentric approaches consider each host country to be unique. Businesses adapt their marketing mix to these individual markets to maximize sales. Okay, well, we know the hook in the question is sales in Brazil. We know that Brazil as a Portuguese heritage. We know that the Tex-Mex brand of Taco Bell isn't Portuguese, and maybe therefore the Portuguese market is different than that in North America. Okay, so we can talk about the benefits of this. This doesn't mean that Taco Bell will change its name and be a totally different company. It means that there will be polycentric elements of the menu. Okay, we've talked about this extensively in class to do with food and clothing, but there might be elements of the menu that will be changed, but they will still retain the overall global brand, localization of Taco Bell. Okay, hopefully that differentiates them against the likes of McDonald's and other domestic competitors. And we've got some things in here. So we've got some, some of the local drinks that they've got on the menu, which we might not find in the United States. Okay, therefore we can describe why this is a polycentric element of the menu. Don't just drop it in, describe it. That's the difference between not very good marks and actually very good marks, is people that will describe why this is, in this case, a polycentric menu item. Okay, local tastes, polycentric menu item, therefore familiar. Okay, very important for food, beverages, those sorts of things. Then option 2, we're going on to ethnocentric. Again, we've got a nice definition here. This is, again, I've not changed this, but we could have easily improved this. We're a business such as Taco Bell with an identity of Texas Mexican origin. Okay, they may choose not to adapt their menu. Okay, so we've got some things that are, they're sold in US outlets. It's not just dropped in, sold in US outlets. Okay, so we need to understand that things like crowded market, very, very important. If they go in and they localize all their menu, what makes them Taco Bell? We've talked extensively about how Tesco's didn't do too well in China because it said Tesco's above the door, but when you walked through, because it's a grocery store, most things on the shelves were relatively familiar to the locals. Therefore, what did Tesco actually stand for? Well, it turned out not a lot, and that's why they exited the country. Okay, so there's lots in there, and you'll see that the examiners have mentioned laws on fast food. Well, if only we would have answered a question about that earlier in the paper. Hey? So, as we know, context is king. Excuse my lack of Photoshop skills here. So we are looking for level 4. We are not looking for perfection. We're looking for option 1, 2p paragraphs, one in favour, one against, 5 chains of argument, which would be nice if we drop a little bit of our Ansoff language in there to do with risk, for example, a bit of Porter's 5 forces linked into economies of scale. There's a lot you could do with this. And we're then going to go to our answer the question, go back, choose one. You're then going to justify it, and obviously we need to justify our judgments. And the solution will obviously be to choose one over the other. Okay? In the future, you have to think about your justification. So the possible MOPs is quite easy for this, really, because based on current trends in Brazil, I justify this one because it's so much better than the other. However, in the future, if the Brazilian market becomes more westernized and influenced by American culture, including food, Taco Bell may decide to put more of its American original recipes and menu choices on there. Okay, so we're thinking about what could possibly influence a change in the future. It could be, however, in the future, if there is a resurgence in the love of Portuguese food in Brazil, then maybe Taco Bell will further adapt a more polycentric menu to cater for these changing trends in Brazil. Okay, so you can have it either way. There's not a right or wrong answer for this, as long as you're justifying it properly. So we're going to move on to the question. And remember, most suitable for Taco Bell to increase its Brazilian sales. This is what you'd have at the top of the page. You'd have your hook is there. You would have already written 1 next to this and 2 next to this. We know they have limited success, and we know that sales are the success measure that we need to focus on. Yes, profits, yes, economies of scale, but this could be economies of scale of marketing as well, by the way, not just bulk purchasing of tacos. So moving on, we'll go paragraph through paragraph. So a polycentric approach would be where Taco Bell adapts all of its menu items to suit the local Brazilian consumers. So we've got a knowledge mark there, okay? This might be done through changing the spices within each dish, spices, bit of context there, or creating entirely new dishes. An ethnocentric approach would be where Taco Bell sticks to its Texas Mexican, nice context, influences and offers the same food to Brazilian consumers as it does in America and Mexico. So we can see that we've got two lovely definitions. They're both in context and it sets the scene for this student's work. Okay, there's no magic formula to these answers other than what we see in the mark scheme. So if you're watching revision videos and they're talking about, I don't know, pecan pie paragraphs or it's all the same stuff. Okay, so what you need to do is just make sure you're confident with the mark scheme. And here we can see nice definitions, nice context. And as an examiner, if I was an examiner and not a Dalmatian, I would be going, I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah, because I've just marked about 20 that are totally abstract because this is the last 20 marker and lots of people have mismanaged their time. Taco Bell should adopt a polycentric approach because it's more likely to meet the Brazilian fast food consumer needs. This is important because those liking fast food also have access to other food and beverages beverage in multinationals such as Pepsi and KFC. Nice context. This leads to Brazilian customers feeling satisfied because Taco Bell have incorporated flavours and products they are used to, and wrong glasses, by adding local flavours to its traditional menu. Okay, lots of quotes here. Therefore, increasing the chance of repeat purchases. This is linked to the hook. For Taco Bell, having a positive effect on overall sales. Straight on the end there. Okay, very nice, straight to the hook. However, this approach might confuse Brazilian consumers who were expecting to access the popular American brand as opposed to selling flavours. So we've got a bit of a counter argument in there. Okay, but it's not a full P paragraph. We've got a bit of context there. This is very nice. Okay, lovely chains of argument. It's obvious that this person's used the chains of argument, interpretation of data, and actually, is it about polycentric? Yeah, I believe it is. So very much answering the question. Bit of a question mark around this, however, we will see how they've dealt with this. Taco Bell should adopt an ethnocentric approach. So they've gone from polycentric, tiny however, to ethnocentric. Watch this space. Taco Bell should adopt an ethnocentric approach as it allows them to stay true to their roots. Okay, not really sure what that is at the moment, but we'll see. This is important because Taco Bell have a strong brand image as an American fast food business. This leads to fast food consumers around the world being able to access the same classic menu items in Brazil. Therefore, by maintaining a consistent global strategy, they can achieve their global objective of operating a large scale, nice quote, and allow consumers to access the same Tex-Mex context comfort food wherever they are in the world. Okay? However, because Taco Bell already over popular Tex-Mex dishes, but have limited success, could link that into sales better. It could be argued that these aren't popular to consumers in Brazil. So what we've got up here is we've got a globally focused paragraph which could be better focused on the Brazilian market. Okay, it talks a lot about the global brand image and comfort food, and people are used to the Tex-Mex brand image, and then it says, however, maybe not in Brazil. So this could be more focused on the Brazilian marketplace, the positive of using this in Brazil, not the positive of using this globally, even though I do acknowledge that Brazil is part of the global economy. Then they shouldn't use polycentric. Now, the technique we advise you in class to do is P paragraph in favour, polycentric, P paragraph against. Now, it doesn't actually matter as long as we've got balance in the argument. So this student has decided to use a slightly different way of writing an essay. Is it balanced? Does it have the chain of arguments? Does it tick all those level 4 criteria that we've talked about? And if it does, then they will still get the marks. I chose this one on purpose because it's slightly different than the way that we normally recommend that you write an essay. But more importantly, we will explore, does it tick all those criteria? Taco Bell shouldn't adopt polycentric because it's much harder to ensure quality control. Okay, now remember we're talking about marketing here, and we have to be very careful that this doesn't go off into some sort of design mix argument instead of a marketing mix argument. This is important because adding local flavour that Taco Bell isn't used to incorporating into dishes, there's a high risk that the dishes won't be liked by consumers. Okay, well that could be the product in the marketing mix. This leads to the brand facing negative reviews and dissatisfaction from customers, therefore impacting the global reputation and having a negative impact on its sales in Brazil. Okay, well, we've come back to the hook in the question, which is good. But on sales around the world, I should read properly. Definitely bring my right glasses next time I do this. However, if Taco Bell don't change any menu items, there's also a significant risk that the Brazilian taste won't match that of the American consumers. Okay, so I think some of this is linked into design mix, even though there is like by consumers, so we could call that the product, obviously, which is obviously in that design mix anyway, but it is about the fit to the market and the global brand and linked into sales. Similar argument, really. It is contextualised. We've got quotes from the case study, which is always reassuring, and it does link into sales in Brazil. We've got that same little however on the end. It's a similar however than we've seen in other points. Taco Bell shouldn't adopt an ethnocentric approach because it lacks cultural sensitivity. Okay, I can understand that, but we will see how that's explored. This is important because Brazil is a country with diverse flavours, spices, and is known for its exceptional food. This leads to Taco Bell disregarding the unique tastes and preferences that Brazilian consumers are likely to have, therefore producing a classic menu item that don't resonate with these preferences, likely not helping to increase the Brazilian sales. Okay, so what I'm looking for in here is some case study evidence that's obvious, and there's a bit of own knowledge in here, which is nice to see. So they're well known, and the diverse flavours and exceptional food and spices. Okay, we can see there's a little bit of own knowledge. And then, however, it could be argued Brazilians aren't looking for local flavours. So it's the same sort of argument reworded from previous paragraphs. I think that could be better contextualised. In conclusion, nice way to start a conclusion, Taco Bell should adopt an ethnocentric approach in Brazil, full stop. They've answered the question. They've not waffled around the edges, they've just gone straight for the jugular. And have they, which one? Well, it's answered. Now we're going to be looking for the justification. This is because one of the country's global objectives is to operate on a larger scale. Okay? Countries with 200 locations. We'll forgive the countries. By not adapting menu items, Taco Bell can bulk buy and mass produce different dishes. This allows them to achieve economies of scale on raw materials such as meat and tortilla wraps. Okay, let's see if this now links into sales. Okay, this is relevant because, now just in case I was unsure if this was relevant, this student has basically brought my attention to something that they're going to persuade me is why this argument is relevant. Because the Brazilian fast food industry is an already crowded market, hence Taco Bell will probably need to invest quite heavily in advertisements even, to raise awareness of their presence. So by cutting costs via economies of scale, the brand can divert the use of their finances towards suitable advertising strategies. Hence why the economies of scale are important. Let's market a lot more to bring people into the Taco Bells. In the long term, Taco Bell might start to utilize a geocentric approach as they begin to understand the needs of the Brazilian consumers more effectively. So we've started to see a little bit of a development of MOPs, and in the future, this one is not so much if the trends change, it's sort of saying if they don't understand the culture. Well, they're a global brand. They would have probably got consultants to give them lots of information on the Brazilian market. It is a massive economy, so there will be lots of data out there. And I think presuming sometimes that a company going into a new country won't understand the local market, I think we would want to see evidence of that in the case study before we present that assertion. So I'm not sure I can 100% buy that. However, until they start to access this market knowledge, an ethnocentric approach is most suitable to boost sales in Brazil. So they come back and they're justifying their overall answer. Okay, so we've got some really good context in a lot of this, good chains of argument. It comes into sales. This could be better focused for the context. This could be better focused on Brazil, and overall the conclusion starts to go over to economies of scale instead of talking about the marketing principles. So it basically says, if we use economies of scale, we can save money and we can spend loads of money on advertising. Okay, but the question isn't so much about spending money, it's about maximizing sales and which one of these marketing principles are going to be most successful. Okay, so the justification gets a little bit lost. So we're back on to what level is this? Okay, clearly had fun with AI this morning. So we're looking for accurate and thorough knowledge and understanding. Well, we've got that, haven't we? Yeah, we've got supported throughout by relevant and effective use of business behaviour in context. Well, I'm not sure if it's in every single paragraph. Okay, so I think one paragraph got a little bit lost and started looking at global brand, even though there's a bit of a link back to Brazil. I think that justification, we'll come on to that in a second, wasn't quite what we were looking for there. Yes, there was an overall answer. Yeah, it was sort of justified, but got a bit lost with the excitement of economies of scale. So this throughout, I would possibly question. Well-developed logical chains of argument, well-developed, we know is really, we're looking for 5, and possibly dropping in a bit more knowledge. Now, knowing this student, who is outstanding by the way, If they would have done the other questions before this 20 marker, they would have probably dropped a little bit more to do with risk, Ansoff, and possibly that economies of scale could have been linked to economies of scale of marketing a bit better. So we might drop a little bit of Porter's in there, power of the seller with that brand. So we've got 5 chains of argument in most of it, and also what they've done is they've just dropped a little however on the end there, even though sometimes that was more effective than others. We've got causes and effects. I think the arguments were generally very well developed. Good use of application from the case study, a little bit of own knowledge dropped into one of those other, one of those later paragraphs. There was one paragraph that we could have used a bit more context, okay, from the case study. Validity and significance, well, I think that was discussed, so at the end, definitely, it was, if when they get this extra knowledge, maybe, but until they do, okay, so there was quite a nice link there to validity and significance of those arguments, and also that factor that might influence the move to geocentric in the future. Even though the question was not about geocentric, the student clearly did the pros and cons for polycentric and ethnocentric, and didn't really talk about polycentric until it was talking about that MOPS related factor. That's fine. However, if a student was to go off onto their geocentric rant in the middle of the essay and talk about geocentric because they think that's the right thing to do, that would have been the wrong thing. You'd have been punished for that. We've got the effective conclusion that proposes a solution. It was clearly answered because they identified the hook. And if you looked at their plan, which obviously I saw, it said option 1, option 2. And there was no way of actually not answering this question directly. Okay? Now, because I feel there was one paragraph that wasn't quite focused on Brazil, and because of the justification, we can argue over marks here. It's probably low level 4. Depending who's marking it, it might be reasonable level 3. So I think if this student would have answered the other questions, so I should repeat, before this one, we would have seen a little bit more detail there. It's a very good answer with a couple of little tweaks, then we're probably going to squeeze it up to mid-level 4. Context is king. We need to make sure everything is contextualized and also focused on the hook in the question. And the hook in the question, remember, was not global sales, it was Brazilian sales. Okay, so a very good answer. Thank you very much to the student for allowing me to use your essay as an example, and hopefully that has been useful. Have a nice day.